My name is Dwayne Barnes, and I'm here to give you a presentation about human communication and clarity and how we can get the message through. When we take a look at communication, we must observe that communication is just not about language or just about talking. Communication is a process in which we engage to create meanings by different types of verbal and nonverbal behaviors, and messages are received through these behaviors. Because we live with different culture, age groups, and genders, many communicate in a way that communicates one thing, but that message may get to another person and it may mean another thing. How can we make the message clear? That is what I'm here to present. In today's society, we communicate through smartphones, tablets, and technology. And even Christian leaders use tablets when ministering. And now even churches have screens which gives the text of the Bible. The problem sometimes is that if it is not being done clearly and people are not used to what is being taught, the message does not get clear. So we have to take the time to figure out how can we get the message clear. First of all, one of the things that we must begin to do as a society is that we need to understand communication. What is the goal of communication? If we do not understand the purpose of communicating, then many times we will take for granted that a message has been relayed when in fact it has not. As a Christian educator, for instance, we have a purpose to train, help, equip, and build the people of God and bring them to maturity. If this message is not communicated, many people will eventually come to the church, hear a message, jump around, and before the service is over, forget the message. Humans participate, whether nonverbal or verbal, but there needs to be interaction and participation, and this allows for the exchange. As I mentioned, how can we understand the communication? There has to be an exchange. Within our society, there's different organizations. Organizations have what we call corporate culture. When we look at those corporations, they do their best to bring about an exchange that everyone can understand. As a society, that can be part of what our goal is. How can we bring about this change? As I mentioned earlier, we have to begin to understand what communication is. How can we get it out to teach people the meaning of communication? I, for one, believe that just as much as sociology, psychology, and all these things have to be taught to people. I even believe that from grade school, it should be incorporated into many people's, the curriculum of children. When you begin to start and you start to teach people from an early grade, they begin to learn that communication, as I mentioned earlier, is not just talking. Communication is learning to relay messages that can get through clearly. As we teach about the different cultures and the styles, we begin to also learn how to relate to one another. I will say over the years, society has become more tolerant of one another because we have learned to tolerate and listen to one another. As years have gone by, we know that in the early years, many times because of our differences, we will begin to fear one another. Over the years, we have learned that society no longer feels that just because you're different from me and I don't understand you, I have a right to kill you or harm you or do anything. In today's society, we are more tolerant. You do not have the right to harm anyone or do anything just because they are different. In fact, because of this tolerance, we are now becoming more of a society that is learning how to become more communicating and getting a message through. I also believe one of the philosophers, Aristotle, he made a contribution to society, and he believed in the study of speaking. because his form of instruction of speaking showed how logic and emotion plays in the part of communication. Now, as I mentioned, from early grade, if we do take the logical part of learning and place it within our studies, we begin to teach people to tolerate other people, as we learned what Aristotle did, because it plays a part of logic and emotion coming together. It brings about more of our understanding. Because, as I mentioned earlier, when I don't understand something, sometimes I fear it. So that's showing you right there, not knowing and fear, that's logic and that's emotion. And when they're not working together, can cause harm. But when we teach the logic and emotion together and bring about more clarity, therefore we can communicate more. We do live at a time, as I mentioned earlier, where people begin to communicate through texting and things of that nature. And as we learn, sometimes through texting, people come up with different types of different types of style even in that. Many times you may have text someone, and after you text, you say LOL, which means laugh out loudly. That is a form of communication that gets through. Somehow that came through the culture that what you may have involved in or know about, that's where you know that that comes about. It becomes also certain things are universal. While we have a long way to go, and as humans being all on one accord, I will say that there is a need for us to continue moving in a way that brings clarity to us as humans.